There is a particular kind of silence that follows death. Not the silence of an empty room. Not the silence of a held breath. It is the silence of a name, spoken into the air, and no one answering. My sister's name was Seren. It meant star in the old tongue. And she was, in every way that mattered, a star. Bright, unreachable. The kind of light people navigated their lives by without ever truly understanding what they were looking at. I was Mara. I meant nothing in the old tongue. I was simply the other one, the quieter twin, the one who walked half a step behind, always in orbit, never the center. We were identical in the way that mattered to strangers. Same dark hair, same gray eyes, same slight curve at the bridge of the nose. But those who knew us could always tell. Seren stood like she expected the world to part for her. I stood like I was apologizing for taking up space. The night she died, the forest took her. That is the only way I know to say it. One moment she was beside me, warm and certain and alive. The next, she was gone. And the wolves howled. Not in mourning. In recognition. I did not understand it then. I was too consumed by grief, too hollowed by loss, too desperate to survive the night that had already swallowed her whole. I made a choice in those hours before dawn. A terrible choice. A necessary one. I became her. I took her name like a garment and I put it on. I told myself it was only temporary. Only until I was safe. Only until I understood what had happened. Only until I found a way back to myself. But lies have a way of becoming the skin you live in. And the deeper I walked into Seren's life, the more her life became a cage I had built around my own heart. Then he found me. Alpha Selim of the Ashwood pack. Ancient lineage. Unyielding will. Eyes like storm gray stone. He looked at me, and something in him knew. Not the truth. Never the truth. He knew something else. Something I did not yet have words for. Something that would unravel everything. This is not a love story. Not entirely. It is the story of a girl who wore her dead sister's name and discovered, too late, perhaps, that she had also inherited her fate. And that fate was bound, by blood and by bond and by something older than either, to a man who would have to choose between the truth and the girl he had already chosen. I am still not sure he made the right choice. I am still not sure I did. But I remember the way the moon looked the night he said my sister's name, and I answered to it. And I remember the exact moment I stopped being Mara entirely. It was not a loud moment. It never is. Chapter 1 begins now. Listen carefully. Some stories ask you to pay attention. This one demands it. Chapter 1. The forest had a border. Every child raised near Ashwood knew it by instinct before they learned it by teaching. There was a line, invisible to the eye but absolute to the body, where the ordinary trees ended and something else began, where the bark of the oaks grew darker, where the undergrowth thinned in a way that felt deliberate, where the air changed temperature by a degree no thermometer could explain. Animals did not cross it, birds did not sing past it, and humans, wise, ordinary, self-preserving humans, did not approach it after dark. I crossed it at midnight, with my sister's traveling cloak on my shoulders, her name on the tip of my tongue, and her blood still on my hands. Not metaphorically, literally. I had tried to save her. I had pressed my palms against the wound at her side and I had said her name. Seren, stay, Seren, please, as if words were enough to hold a soul inside a body. They weren't. Nothing was. The wound was not from an ordinary blade. I had not yet understood what made it. I only knew it was deep, and it was deliberate, and whoever had made it had known exactly where to strike. She died with her eyes open. Gray eyes, the same shade as mine, fixed upward at the sky. I closed them. I sat beside her for what felt like hours but was probably less than one. Then the sounds began. Footsteps, too rhythmic to be animal, too quiet to be human. The low vibration of something vast moving through undergrowth. And beneath it all, a sound that entered through the chest rather than the ears. A pulse, deep and ancient and territorial. I ran, not toward safety. I had no clear sense of where safety was anymore. I ran toward the only landmark I had left, the border of Ashwood. My sister had been summoned there. That was the word she had used 3 days before, in the careful, composed way she used all words. I've been summoned, Mara, by the Ashwood Alpha. I don't fully understand why yet, but I think it may be about the old agreement. The old agreement. Our family's name, Voss, was written in Ashwood's founding records, in ink made from elderberry and ash. 3 generations back, our grandmother had made a contract with the then Alpha. She had offered something, No one in our family spoke of it directly, and in return, she had received protection. The protection had expired, and now the current alpha had sent for Seren to renegotiate. Only Seren was dead in the forest, and I was crossing the border wearing her cloak, and the wolves were howling behind me. I did not make a plan in those moments. I want to be clear about that. What I did was not calculated. It was not scheming. It was terror, pure and simple and animal, dressed up, later, in the language of necessity. I crossed into Ashwood, and the forest received me. The trees thickened above me immediately, their canopy lacing together like fingers interlocked, blocking the sky. The temperature did not drop. If anything, it rose, a dry, charged warmth that reminded me of the moment before lightning. The undergrowth was silent. Then I heard the voice. "You're late." It came from my left. I turned. A figure stood between two oaks, half swallowed by shadow. Tall, broad at the shoulder, wearing dark wool and no expression that I could read. Young, younger than I had expected, though there was something in the set of his jaw that belonged to a much older kind of person. His eyes found mine, and something shifted. In him, in the air between us, in the very ground beneath my feet, or so it seemed. He took a step forward, then stopped, as if something had interrupted a thought he was certain of. "Seren Voss," he said. Not a question, a statement of fact. And I answered to it. "Yes," I said. "I'm sorry I'm late." The lie came out of me smooth and automatic, the way a reflex does. Not chosen, not weighed, just done. Something moved behind his eyes. Something complicated that I could not name. "You smell of blood," he said. Quiet, clinical, like a man cataloging information. "I was attacked," I said. And that, at least, was true. On the road. I wasn't followed. He studied me for a long, dangerous moment. The forest held its breath. "I am Selim," he said. "Alpha of Ashwood." He did not extend his hand. He did not bow. He simply said his name, and let the weight of it settle in the space between us, and watched to see how I would carry it. I thought of Seren, the way she stood, the way she met power without apology. I straightened my spine. "I know who you are," I said. The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something more careful than that. "Come," he said, and turned into the forest. I followed, and I did not look back at the border I had just crossed. I understood, in the wordless part of my mind, that I would not be going back through it. Not as myself. Not as Mara. Not for a very long time. If ever. The question I carried with me into those dark trees was simple and brutal and absolutely unanswerable in that moment. What did my sister agree to? And what, exactly, had I just inherited? Chapter 2. They called it a great house. I would have called it something older than that. It rose out of the forest the way some things rise, not built so much as grown, as if the trees themselves had agreed, at some point centuries ago, to lean inward and become something more deliberate. Stone walls, yes, and timber beams, and windows set deep in thick masonry. But the vines climbing the eastern face were not decorative. They were structural. They held something, reinforced something. And the wolves that sat on the stone steps, 3 of them, enormous, silver gray in the moonlight, were not decorative either. They watched me approach with Selim. One of them rose. My breath caught. Not because it was large, though it was. Because it looked at me the way no animal should look at a person, with full comprehension, with assessment. Selim made a low sound, barely a sound at all, more like a change in the vibration of the air around him, and the wolf Saturday. "They are curious," he said. "You are a new scent." "And you?" I asked, before I could stop myself. He paused on the steps, looked at me sidelong. "I am also curious," he said, "but I am better at waiting." Inside, the house was warm. Too warm, almost, after the night air. The kind of warmth that makes you suddenly aware of how cold you have been, how cold you perhaps always are. There were others in the entry hall. A woman with silver-streaked hair and the eyes of someone who had seen many things and catalogued them all. A young man with his arms crossed and a mouth that seemed built for arguments. 3 others deeper in shadow, watching. "My second, Rael," Selim said, indicating the young man with his chin. "An Eldress Myra, the keeper of our records." The Eldress looked at me with an expression that was careful, as if she were seeing 2 things at once and reconciling them. "Seren Voss," she said, and her voice had the texture of very old paper. "Yes," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "You look different from the portrait," she said. I knew, in that instant, that there was a portrait. I did not know what it depicted. I did not know when it had been made, or by whom, or whether the difference she perceived was meaningful or imaginary. "It was made some time ago," I said. A calculated response. Vague, plausible, unverifiable. The eldress said nothing further, but she did not look away. Rael, the second, stepped forward. "You were supposed to arrive 3 days ago," he said. There was no courtesy in his voice. The Alpha waited. I was delayed. I met his gaze. I apologized to the Alpha directly, not to his second. A beat of silence. Then Selim made that sound again, not quite a word, and Rael stepped back. Something had happened in that exchange. I felt it without fully understanding it. Some test had been administered. Whether I had passed it, I did not yet know. "You'll be given a room," Selim said. "You'll eat. You'll rest. Tomorrow, we discuss the terms of the agreement." He was already turning away. "What agreement, specifically?" I asked. He stopped, turned back slowly. This time the look he gave me was sharper. "The one your grandmother made," he said. "And that you, as eldest of the Voss bloodline, are here to fulfill." The eldest of the Voss bloodline. That was Seren. She had been born 14 minutes before me. 14 minutes that had, apparently, made all the difference in what our grandmother had promised. "I see," I said. And then, because I had to know something, anything, before I went to bed in a wolf Alpha's house wearing my dead sister's name. And if I choose not to fulfill it? The silence that followed was very long. The eldress looked at her hands. Rael looked at the floor. The wolves outside shifted their weight. Selim looked at me with those storm-grey eyes and said, very quietly, "That is not a choice you were given, Seren. It was made for you before you were born." He left, and I stood in the warm entry hall of a house built by wolves, wearing a dead woman's name, and understood that whatever Seren had been coming here to face, I was going to have to face it instead. The only question was whether I would survive it, and whether, by the time I was done, there would be anything left of Mara worth surviving for. Chapter 3. I did not sleep. I lay on the bed in the room they had given me, a narrow room with stone walls and a window overlooking the inner courtyard where the wolves moved in slow patterns, and I stared at the ceiling and I thought of Seren. I thought about what she had known that I hadn't. She had come here with knowledge, with preparation. She had spent 3 days before her departure going through our grandmother's old papers, the ones kept in the cedar box beneath the floorboards. I had watched her read them, watched the careful way she processed each page, the way she folded the paper back along its original creases before moving to the next. She had not shared everything she'd found. Seren rarely shared everything. Not from cruelty, from protection. She always believed she was protecting me by keeping me at the margins of the difficult things. I had resented it, sometimes. I did not resent it now. I was grateful she had taught me, by example, how to appear composed when I understood nothing at all. In the morning, a girl, young, dark-eyed, moving with the careful economy of someone raised around power, brought me water and a clean change of clothes. She did not speak more than necessary, but she watched me with the same slightly too-aware quality that everyone in this house seemed to carry. The clothes were not mine. They were not Seren's. They were plain and well-made and fit me exactly, which meant someone had known my measurements before I arrived. That detail settled into my chest like a stone into still water, rippling outward slowly. The meeting took place in a room at the back of the house that was neither formal nor casual, but occupied some deliberate space between the two. A table of dark wood, maps on the walls, not of roads, but of territories, pack lines, disputed borders. Selim sat at the head of the table, Rael to his left, the eldress to his right. I sat across from them, alone on my side of the table, and for a moment, before anyone spoke, I understood what that was. An interrogation arranged to look like a negotiation. "The agreement," Selim began, his hands folded on the table, his voice even, "is outlined here." He placed a document between us. Thick paper, old ink, and at the bottom, a signature I recognized. My grandmother's name, and beneath it, the wax seal of Ashwood. "Your grandmother offered the firstborn of the Voss bloodline of each generation," the eldress said, "as a bridge between our people and hers. Not a servant, not a subject, but a bonded mate to the reigning Alpha, should the Alpha's wolf recognize the Voss heir as his." The room was very quiet. "And has he?" I asked. Recognized her. Me. I caught myself. Almost too late. Selim's eyes flickered. That is what this meeting is to determine, Rael said. The recognition, the eldress continued, is not a formality. It is biological. It is the mate bond. The wolves recognize their true pair not through choice, but through something older. Scent, energy, resonance of the blood. She paused. You understand what I am saying? I do, I said. And I did. In the old stories, the ones our grandmother told, the ones I had dismissed as mythology, the mate bond was not a romance. It was a claim. Something that moved through the body like a current. Something that, once established, changed both parties irrevocably. It could not be transferred. It could not be faked. Which meant, if the Voss was genuinely Seren's role to fill, then Selim's wolf should not recognize me. A wolf does not recognize the wrong person. Except something had shifted last night, in the forest, when he first looked at me. I had felt it. I was certain he had felt it too. And I did not understand how that was possible. Unless the bond was not about Seren. Unless it had never been about Seren. Unless, for 14 minutes, the 14 minutes between my birth and hers, I had been the firstborn. Before she arrived. Before she took the title. We need a day, Selim said. I looked up. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. The formal recognition requires proximity, he said. A full cycle of the day. We do not rush it. And if recognition doesn't occur? I asked. It will, the eldress said. Not a prediction. A certainty. I felt the stone sink deeper in my chest. Because I was beginning to understand something that I could not say aloud. Not to them, not yet. Not ever, perhaps. The bond was forming. I could feel it at the edges of my awareness like heat through thick glass. Present, undeniable, but not yet fully through. Between me and the Alpha of Ashwood. Not because I was Seren. Because, perhaps, I had always been the one the bond was meant for. And Seren, who had always stood 14 minutes ahead of me, had died before she could take a role that was never truly hers. I excused myself from the table. I walked back to my room. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed. And for the first time since I had crossed the border of Ashwood, I wept. Not for myself. Not for the lie I was living. For Seren, who had come here carrying a destiny that had always, quietly, invisibly, belonged to me. And for the question I could not stop asking. Had she known? Chapter 4. They gave me the forest. Not literally, not a gift, not a gesture of generosity, but the day of proximity, as Selim had called it, meant that I was to spend the waking hours in his presence, moving through the territories he moved through, breathing the same air, allowing whatever ancient mechanism governed the bond to do its work without interference. It was, in practice, a walk through Ashwood. He came to my door at first light. No knock, just a presence on the other side of it, a density in the air that woke me from the half-sleep I had eventually fallen into. I dressed quickly, in the clothes that fit too well, and opened the door. He was standing slightly back from the threshold, as if he had decided, consciously, to give me space. Ready? He asked. Yes, I said. We walked in silence for the first hour, and I learned, in that hour, more about Selim than I might have learned from a week of conversation. He moved through the forest the way water moves through familiar stone, not forcing, not hesitating, finding the path of least resistance not from weakness but from deep familiarity. He knew every route, every turn, every place where the light came through the canopy at a particular angle. He was not performing his comfort here. He simply was comfortable. The way a creature is comfortable in the body it was born into. I tried to observe without being observed. It was harder than it sounds, because he was also watching me. Not obviously, not rudely, but I felt his attention the way you feel warmth from a fire you are not directly facing. Present at the edges. Consistent. You're quieter than I expected, he said, eventually. We had reached a clearing where the trees opened around a dark pool, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the gray morning sky above it. What did you expect? I asked. He considered the question seriously. I appreciated that, the absence of quick, deflecting answers. Your grandmother was not a quiet woman, he said. By the accounts I have. You knew her. My father did. I know his accounts of her. He crouched at the edge of the pool, touched the surface with one finger, barely, just enough to start a single ripple moving outward. She came to Ashwood once, he said, to make the agreement. She was apparently formidable. She was, I said. And that, too, was true. Our grandmother Voss had been the kind of woman who filled rooms without raising her voice, who made decisions the way mountains make decisions, slowly, with enormous weight, and without much consultation of the things beneath her. I had loved her. I had also been slightly terrified of her. Seren had worshipped her. Selim rose. He looked at me across the short distance between us, and for a moment the morning light caught his face at an angle that made him look, briefly, only briefly, not like an alpha, not like a power, but like a person, a tired person. She made the agreement, he said, because she believed the bond between the Voss bloodline and Ashwood would be stabilizing, for both sides. And is Ashwood unstable? I asked. Something moved behind his eyes. All things are unstable, he said. The question is only what you anchor to. We walked on. By midday the forest had changed character, the old growth giving way to younger trees, and beneath them a different quality of light, greener and softer. We stopped at a high point where the canopy broke and the sky was visible in a wide arc above us. And there, for the first time since I had crossed the border, I could see beyond Ashwood, the road I had traveled, the distant edge of the village I had left behind. The ordinary world, small and far away, going about its ordinary business. I stared at it for longer than I should have. Do you miss it? Selim asked from behind me. I turned. He was watching me with that careful, complicated expression again. The one that seemed to hold more information than he was prepared to share. The village. I said. Your life. Before. A pause. Before coming here. I thought of how to answer. I thought of Mara's life. My life. The real one. The small house at the edge of the ordinary village. The garden I tended. The books I read in the evenings. The particular quality of silence that I had, before Seren died, mistaken for contentment. I miss certain things, I said. I'm not sure I miss the life. He nodded slowly, as if that answer meant something specific to him. My father missed his life before the Alpha Mantle too, he said. He said it often, in his last years, that the title was a weight he had chosen freely and would never put down. But the choosing, he said, did not make the weight lighter. When did you inherit it? I asked. 17, he said. 17. So young. So much weight. Your father is gone, he said. Simply, without dramatics. 3 years ago. We stood in the open sky above Ashwood and I did not offer condolences. I sensed they would not be welcome, that they would feel like intrusion into something he kept very carefully contained. Instead I said, is that why you want the bond? The stabilizing force your father didn't have. He turned to look at me fully, and the quality of his attention changed. It became direct. The way a flame becomes direct when the wind around it stops. I want it, he said, because it is real. Because in a world where almost everything I deal with is political, strategic, performed, angled, the bond is the one thing that cannot be faked. A pause. I trust it more than I trust anything else. The bond cannot be faked. He said it so simply, so certainly, and the ground shifted beneath me because the bond was forming. I could feel it, that warmth through thick glass, moving closer now, more insistent, and if it was forming between him and me, if it was real, then what did that mean about the lie I was living inside of it? Could something real be built on something false? Could the most genuine thing in both our lives be growing from the most dishonest root? I looked away from him, out over the forest canopy. Below us, distantly, 3 wolves moved through the undergrowth in a wide circle, sentinel patterns. I was beginning to understand. Routine and rhythmic. Selim, I said. His name was strange in my mouth, both too familiar and not familiar enough. There is something I should tell you. And I meant it. In that moment, standing in the sky above Ashwood with the bond warming through my bones, I genuinely meant to tell him. Mara. My name is Mara. Seren is dead. I am the wrong twin. I am. Alpha. The voice came from below us, sharp, urgent, carrying through the trees with the particular quality of a summons that cannot wait. Rail. Selim's posture changed instantly. Something relaxed went taut. Come, he said to me, already moving. And the moment, the open, honest, terrible moment, closed. Like a door, like a trap, like an eye. I followed him back into the forest, and the confession I had almost made folded itself up inside my chest and found a place to live, and I understood that it would not be offered again so easily. What had I almost done? And why, in that specific moment, had I wanted so badly to do it? Chapter 5. Rael's urgency was not about danger. It was about a visitor. She arrived as we emerged from the forest's edge into the rear courtyard of the great house, a woman on a pale horse, accompanied by 2 riders I did not recognize. She dismounted with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing it since before she could properly walk, and she looked up at the house with an expression of utter familiarity, as if she had come home. She was beautiful. The observation arrived in my mind without vanity or jealousy, just fact, catalogued clearly. She was tall and fine-boned with red gold hair braided over one shoulder and eyes the color of winter amber. She wore riding clothes of deep green that fit her the way clothes fit people who have never had to think about what they cost. And when she saw Selim, when her gaze found him across the courtyard, something moved across her face that was not quite relief and not quite possession, but occupied the territory between them. "Isolde," Selim said. Flat, unreadable. She crossed to him with long, easy strides. Did not wait for invitation. Kissed his cheek, the side of his jaw, really, with the assurance of someone for whom permission is a formality they have long since moved past. "I came as soon as I heard," she said, that she had finally arrived. Her amber eyes found me over his shoulder, and I understood immediately, precisely, and with absolute clarity. This woman had expected to be where I was standing. "Seren Voss," Isolde said, and my name, Seren's name, in her mouth was made of glass. Pretty, fragile, designed to cut. "Yes," I said. "I'm Isolde." She offered her hand. "Of the Thornfield pack. Selim and I have been." She paused, and the pause was deliberate. "Close, for many years." "Isolde," Selim said again. A warning this time. She ignored it gracefully. "I simply thought," she continued, speaking to me while keeping her peripheral awareness entirely on Selim, "that since you're new to Ashwood, it might help to have someone show you the less official sides of things. The Alpha is very thorough about the formal aspects, but there is a great deal he doesn't explain." "Such as?" I asked. She smiled, the smile of a woman who has spent considerable time refining it into a tool. "Such as the fact," she said, "that the mate bond has never, not once, been successfully completed between Ashwood and an outside bloodline. The agreement your grandmother made is ancient, romantic, perhaps, in its intent, but the bond does not follow agreements." "Isolde." Selim's voice had gone quiet in a way that was clearly more dangerous than loud. She turned to him. Her smile did not falter. "I'm being honest," she said. "Surely that's allowed." "You're being strategic," he said. "As always." Something passed between them, long history compressed into a single look, the way long histories always are between people who have known each other too well and perhaps too long. Then Isolde turned back to me. "I have rooms in the East Wing," she said. "I stay here often. We'll have plenty of time to become acquainted." She moved past me into the house. Her shoulder almost brushed mine. Almost. The hair on my arms rose. Not from fear. From something more animal than that. Something I did not yet have a name for in myself. After she had gone, Rael appeared at Selim's side and spoke low and fast, and Selim's jaw tightened, and they moved together toward the house's interior. I was left in the courtyard, alone, with the pale horse being led away by a groom, and the 2 riders from Thornfield watching me from the gate. I thought about what Isolde had said. The bond has never been successfully completed between Ashwood and an outside bloodline. Was that true? Was it strategy, as Selim had said, or was it both? Because if the bond had never successfully completed before, then what was forming between Selim and me? What was this warmth that moved through my chest every time he stood within 10 feet of me? And if it was real, and if it was unprecedented, what would it mean when he discovered the outside bloodline he was bonding with was not even the Voss heir he had invited? What would it mean when he found out that Seren was dead in the forest, and the girl who had answered to her name was the wrong twin entirely? I stood in the courtyard until the morning cold drove me inside, and I thought about Isolde's eyes, the way they had assessed me with the efficiency of a person who has already decided the outcome of a contest. She believed she would win. Whatever this was, whatever the stakes, she believed she would win. I was not sure what I believed, but I was beginning to understand something that frightened me considerably more than losing. I was beginning to want things I had no right to want. Chapter 6. 3 days passed. 3 days of walking the territory with Selim. 3 days of careful conversation, of learning the rhythms of the great house, of watching Isolde move through Ashwood like a woman who owned it in every way except the legal one. 3 days of the bond growing. It was undeniable now. I did not need to understand it fully to feel it. The awareness of him that had nothing to do with sight or sound. The way my body oriented toward him in a room without my permission. The way the air changed quality when he entered it. And mirroring it, because the bond, if genuine, works in both directions. The way he watched me. He was not obvious about it. He was careful and measured and controlled in all things. But I caught it. The slight delay before he looked away when our eyes met. The way he found reasons to close the distance between us, to point something out on a map, to pass me something at the table, that were technically legitimate but not strictly necessary. He was also confused. I could see that too. The confusion of a man whose instincts were speaking clearly and whose mind could not yet reconcile what it was hearing. On the third evening, I found the Eldress in the library. It was late. The house was quiet. I had come for a candle and stayed for the books, the Ashwood records going back generations, the pack histories, the accounts of agreements made and kept and broken. She was already there, sitting with a single lamp, reading something that she closed when I entered. "Sit," she said, not unkindly. I Saturday. She looked at me for a long moment with those eyes that catalogued and processed and filed everything away. "You've been here 3 days," she said. "Yes. And the bond is forming." Not a question. "It seems so," I said. "It is," she said. "I can see it. In both of you." She folded her hands on the closed book. "Tell me," she said, "about your grandmother's cedar box." My heart stopped. Restarted. "What about it?" I said carefully. "There were 2 copies of the agreement," the Eldress said. "One that was sent to your family, and one that is here." She touched the book beneath her hands. "The copy that was sent to your family outlined the terms for Seren." She paused. "The copy that lives here, the original, is slightly different." The room was very quiet. The lamp flame moved in a current I could not feel. "Different how?" I asked. "Your grandmother was precise," the Eldress said. "She was also careful. She did not write Seren's name in the original. She wrote the firstborn of the Voss bloodline." "Seren was the firstborn," I said. "By 14 minutes," the Eldress said. "The silence between us had a texture now, dense and particular." "How do you know that?" I asked. The Eldress smiled, a small, old smile, the kind that has long since stopped being surprised by anything. "Because your grandmother told my predecessor," she said. "And my predecessor told me. And what was passed down with that information was a concern." "What concern?" "That the agreement had been written in one way," she said, "but that nature might interpret it differently. That the bond, which is older and more honest than any agreement, might recognize something that the paperwork did not." She let that settle. I let it. "She worried," I said slowly, "that the bond might choose the second twin." "She worried," the Eldress corrected gently, "that the bond would choose correctly, and that the correctly chosen twin might not be the one she had prepared." I was very still. "Did she know?" I asked. "Which of us it would choose?" "I believe she suspected," the Eldress said. "And she sent Seren anyway." "She sent the firstborn," the Eldress said, "as the agreement stated, as custom required. What she could not control was what happened after." She looked at me steadily. "She also could not control," she said, very quietly, "what might happen if the firstborn did not arrive and the second twin came in her place." The world relined itself around that sentence. She knew. She had known, perhaps, since the first night. The blood on my cloak. The slight wrongness she had seen when she compared me to the portrait. The 14-minute margin that hung over everything like a held breath. She knew. "Are you going to tell him?" I asked. She was quiet for a long time. "That is not a simple question," she said finally. "It seems simple." "It only seems that way," she said, "because you don't yet understand what the bond means. Once it completes," she paused, "it cannot be undone. Not by revelation. Not by will. Not by anything." "You're saying that even if he knows the truth, it won't matter." "I'm saying," she corrected, "that the truth will matter enormously. To his pride. To his sense of order. To the politics of Ashwood." She tilted her head. "But the bond will matter more. And he will have to decide which truth is larger." She rose. Took her lamp. moved toward the door. "Eldris," I said. She stopped. "Why are you telling me this?" She considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Because," she said, "your grandmother was a woman who protected her quieter twin at every turn, who moved her to the margins, who believed she was keeping her safe." A pause. I watched it happen from a distance, through correspondence and accounts. And I always thought the quieter twin deserved to know what she was being kept safe from. She left. I sat in the library alone with the extinguished lamp and the darkness and the weight of everything I now understood. She was not going to tell Selim. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. She was giving me the choice. And wrapped inside that choice was the most dangerous thing I had ever been handed. The possibility that I could stay. Not as Seren. Not as a lie. But as the person the bond had always been reaching for. If only I could find a way to tell him the truth without destroying everything the truth was growing inside of. Chapter 7. The full moon came on the 7th night. I had been warned, in the abstract way that people warn you about things they assume you already understand. The full moon is significant, Rael had said, 2 days prior, with the tone of someone reciting something obvious. You should remain inside after dark. In your room, preferably, with the door closed. I had nodded. I had not fully understood. I understood now. The change in the house began hours before moonrise, a slow crescendo of something I could only describe as pressure. The air thickened. The wolves that usually moved in quiet sentinel patterns through the grounds became still, then restless, then still again in a different way. A charged stillness. A coiled stillness. The people in the house changed too. Not dramatically. Not visibly, to an ordinary eye. But I was beginning, after 7 days, to have something other than an ordinary eye where Ashwood was concerned. Their movements became more deliberate. Their speech became shorter. There was a quality to the silence between words that reminded me of the silence between lightning and thunder. Not empty, but full of what was coming. Selim disappeared after midday. I did not see him at the evening meal. Rael presided instead, eating little and saying less. Isolde was present. She watched me across the table with the amber eyes of someone who was waiting for me to make a mistake she had already predicted. I ate carefully, spoke when spoken to, observed. After the meal, I went to my room as instructed. I sat on the bed. I listened. For a long time, nothing. Then, from somewhere deep in the forest, a sound that entered through the chest rather than the ears. A howl, but not like any howl I had heard before. Not the howl of an animal. The howl of something vast and ancient and entirely itself. A sound that carried inside it something like language, something like history, something like the particular grief of a creature that contains multitudes and cannot explain any of them. My body responded before my mind did. A warmth, sudden, almost painful, in the center of my chest. The bond. Pulling. Toward him. I sat with my hands pressed flat against my sternum and breathed carefully and told myself to stay exactly where I was. I stayed. For nearly an hour. Then the screaming started. Not human screaming. The sound of someone in physical danger. A young voice. From the direction of the east wing. I was moving before I had decided to move. The corridors were empty. The house had a particular abandoned quality on full moon nights. I was learning, when those who could transform had gone to the forest and those who couldn't had found reasons to be elsewhere. I followed the sound to a door at the far end of the east wing. Pushed it open. Inside, a girl, the same dark-eyed girl who brought me water each morning, was crouched in the corner of a small room, clutching her own arms, shaking violently. She was perhaps 15. Her eyes, when she looked up at me, were not entirely human in their quality. She was mid-transition, unable to complete it, unable to stop it, caught between shapes. I had no training for this, no knowledge, technically. But I had something else, a memory, sudden and sharp, of our grandmother's voice reading aloud from one of those papers in the cedar box. The caught ones need grounding, not restraint. They've had enough of that inside their own skin. Grounding, a voice, a heartbeat. Something to orient to that is calmer than what's happening inside them. I crossed the room and sat on the floor in front of her. Not touching, not recoiling, just present. My name is... I stopped. My name is Mara, I said. I don't know why. I don't know why I said it. But my real name came out of me like a breath that had been held too long, and something in the girl's violent shaking, minutely, almost imperceptibly, eased. Mara, I said again. Can you hear me? Yes, she gritted, through locked teeth. Good. Stay with my voice. I talked. I don't remember everything I said. It was not particularly meaningful or eloquent. I described the garden I had kept at home, the particular smell of early morning soil, the way frost looks on stone walls before the sun reaches it, the weight of a trowel, the sound of ordinary birds in ordinary trees. Small, grounded, specific things. And slowly, over 20 minutes that felt much longer, the girl's shaking eased. Her eyes returned to fully human. Her breathing moved from ragged to deep to steady. She looked at me. How did you know to do that? She asked. Someone taught me, I said. That was true. In its way. What's your name? I asked. Petra, she said. I'm still new. To transitioning. I can't always. She stopped. On full moon nights it's the worst. You did well, I said. I screamed. You also stopped, I said. That's the harder part. A sound in the doorway. I looked up. Selim stood there. He was changed. Not in shape. He was fully human in form. But everything else about him was different, more present, more immediate, more there than he usually was. As if the moon had burned away the careful layers of composure he wore during the day and left something rawer and more essential underneath. His eyes went from Petra to me. He took in the scene, the girl on the floor, my position in front of her, the quality of the air in the room. Something moved across his face, complex and layered. She's all right, I said. She just needed to be grounded. I know, he said. He was looking at me in a way that made the bond in my chest pull with sudden force. I could feel it from the forest, that she was caught. You came back for her. She is Pack, he said, simply, as if there were no sentence that needed less explanation. He looked at Petra. Go to Eldris Myra, he said. She'll sit with you through the rest of the night. Petra rose on unsteady legs, passed by me, paused. Thank you, Mara, she said. The word landed in the room like a stone into still water. Selim went very still. The ripples moved outward. Petra left, and we were alone in the small room with the full moon pressing its light through the window and the bond between us pulled taut as a wire and Petra's voice still hanging in the air between us. Thank you, Mara. Selim looked at me. Mara, he said. Not a question. Not quite an accusation. Something suspended between them. It's what she calls me, I said. The lie arrived smoothly. Practiced. Terrible. A childhood name, I said. A family thing. My grandmother called me that sometimes, instead of Seren, he said. Yes, I said. Instead of Seren. He looked at me for a very long time. The full moon poured through the window. The bond hummed between us like a held note. You spoke your name, he said quietly, and she stopped shaking. I just talked to her. You spoke that name, he said, and she stopped, because the bond was in it. He paused. The bond is in you. It doesn't lie. Whatever else is or isn't. He stopped himself, looked at the window, looked back. Are you all right? He asked. The question was so unexpected, so genuinely careful, that something cracked open in my chest that had nothing to do with the bond and everything to do with the fact that no one, in many days of danger and pretense and grief, had asked me that. I don't know, I said. Honest. Entirely honest. He nodded slowly, as if that answer was the one he had needed to hear. Neither am I, he said. And he left. And I sat on the floor of a small room in the east wing of a house built by wolves, with my real name still trembling in the air around me, and I understood that the lie I was living had just developed its first, crucial, fracture. He had heard my name. He had not fully registered it, but he had heard it. And some things, once heard, cannot be unheard, no matter how long we pretend otherwise. Chapter 8. She came to my room the next morning, before the water girl, before Petra, who I now knew by name, arrived, before the house had fully woken. In the grey, early light when the world is not quite one thing or another. A knock. Precise. 3 strikes. I opened the door. Isolde stood in the corridor with 2 cups of something hot and the expression of a woman who has decided to change her tactics. May I? She said. I stepped back. She entered and looked around the room with a quick, thorough assessment that missed nothing and revealed nothing of what she found. Then she sat in the chair by the window and held out one of the cups. I took it, sat on the edge of the bed. We drank in silence for a moment. The steam rose between us. I want to be honest with you, she said. Are you capable of that? I asked. A pause. Then, Something unexpected, a short, genuine laugh. "More than you might think," she said, "though I admit I haven't shown you the evidence." She set her cup down on the windowsill. Outside, the morning forest was pale and still after the full moon. "Selim and I grew up together," she said. "Our packs have been allies for 3 generations. My father and his father were as close as brothers. He and I," she paused, selecting the words deliberately, "were expected, for a long time, to bond." "Expected by whom?" I asked. "By everyone," she said. "By both our families. By the elders of both packs. By everyone except." "The bond itself," I said. She looked at me. Something shifted in her amber eyes. A brief, honest moment of something that might have been grief before she replaced it with composure. "The bond itself," she confirmed. It was never there. Between us. Not for lack of," she stopped. "Not for lack of wanting." The morning light moved across the windowsill. "I'm not telling you this to gain your sympathy," she said. "Then why?" "Because I want you to understand the position you are walking into," she said. "The bond that is forming between you and Selim, I can see it. Everyone in this house can see it. And it is real, more quickly, than—" She stopped, composed herself. "More than I expected," she said simply. I waited. "There are people in Ashwood," she said, "and in the surrounding territories, who will not accept an outside bloodline as the alpha's mate, who have been waiting, for 3 years, for Selim to bond with someone from within the established packs, who have political and strategic interests in that outcome." "You mean your pack?" I said. "I mean several packs," she said. "Mine among them." "Yes. And you're warning me." "I am offering you a choice," she said. She reached into the pocket of her coat, withdrew a small folded paper, set it on the windowsill between us. I looked at it without touching it. "What is that?" "A way out," she said. "If you want it. A passage arranged, discreet, safe, no questions. You leave Ashwood before the bond completes. You return to wherever you came from." She folded her hands in her lap. "In exchange," she said, "I ask only that you do not return." The room was very quiet. I looked at the paper. I thought about what it contained, the promise of ordinary life, of return, of becoming Mara again in some village somewhere and keeping a garden and reading books and never having to answer to a dead woman's name again. I thought about Selim, the way he had looked at me in the moonlit room the night before. "Neither am I," he had said. When I told him I didn't know if I was all right. "Neither am I." The specific honesty of that. The way it had broken something open in me. "If I leave," I said, "what happens to Petra?" Isolde blinked. That was not the question she had expected. "The girl from last night," I said, "who is still learning to transition, who got caught on the full moon and couldn't get out. She would be," Isolde paused, "she would be managed, as she was before you arrived." "How was she managed before I arrived?" A silence. "She was locked in her room," I said. Not a question. Isolde looked at the window. It was considered the safest. "For whom?" The silence stretched. I picked up the folded paper, held it, felt the texture of it between my fingers. The promise of escape. The easiest thing I had been offered since I crossed the border of Ashwood. Then I set it back on the windowsill. "I'm not leaving," I said. Isolde looked at me. "You understand what you're choosing," she said. Flat. Careful. "I'm beginning to," I said. "The people who oppose this bond. Let them oppose it," I said. Something moved across Isolde's face. Several things, in quick succession. Calculation. Reassessment. And then, buried deep, almost invisible, something that looked, improbably, like respect. She rose, took her cup, left the paper on the windowsill. At the door she paused. "He will find out the truth eventually," she said. Not cruelly, almost gently. "Whatever truth it is you're carrying." "I know," I said. "And when he does," she paused, "it will not be gentle." "I know that too." She left. I sat alone with the folded paper on the windowsill and the morning light growing stronger and the bond in my chest humming steadily and the absolute knowledge that I had just made a choice I could not unmake. I was staying. Not for the bond. Not for the lie. Not for any of the complex, tangled reasons that had brought me to this room. I was staying because somewhere in the last 7 days I had stopped pretending to be Seren and started, quietly, without permission, without plan, becoming something else entirely. Someone who sat on floors with frightened girls. someone who refused easy escapes, someone who was beginning, despite everything, to belong somewhere. And belonging, real belonging, the kind earned through presence and choice and the willingness to stay when leaving is offered, was something Mara had never had. Was I willing to destroy it with the truth? Or had I already decided to let the lie carry me a little further? Just a little further. Just until I understood how to say it. Just until I found the words that would not break everything. Just a little further. Chapter 9. It happened on a Tuesday. Unremarkable days have a way of holding the most remarkable moments. The universe, it seems, has a preference for ambush. We were in the archive room. Selim had asked me, he had asked Seren, to review the founding records with him, to identify what the Voss family's obligations were beyond the mate bond itself, whether there were other conditions, other clauses, other agreements nested within the larger one. It was, technically, a reasonable request. It was also, I understood, sitting beside him at the long table with the old records spread between us, an act of trust. He was showing me the inner workings of Ashwood, the sensitive machinery, the inherited complications. He was letting me in. We sat close. Necessity. The records required both sets of eyes, often simultaneously, comparing passages, cross-referencing dates. The proximity was ordinary. The bond made it extraordinary. I was aware of every breath he took. The particular warmth of him. Wolves run warm, I had learned, a degree or two above the ordinary human range. The way his shoulder almost touched mine when he leaned forward to trace a line of text. The scent of him, cedar and cold stone and something darker underneath, something old and forested and entirely particular to him. The bond hummed, constant, insistent. He turned a page. "Here," he said, and pointed. I leaned in. The entry was dated 3 generations back. Our grandmother's visit to Ashwood, recorded in the precise hand of the eldress of that time. The Voss woman came as agreed. She carried with her 2 matters of business, the agreement itself, and a secondary clause pertaining to the nature of the bloodline inheritance. She was clear that the bond, if it formed, would be absolute and would supersede all prior alliances or arrangements. She was also clear, the next line, that both daughters of the Voss line carried the scent, that the bond would find its own way, that she was sending the elder, but the agreement had always been written for the one the bond chose. Selim went still. I went still. We both read the line again. In the silence, the dust motes moved through the light from the high window. "Both daughters," he said. The words were very quiet, very careful. The Voss woman had 2 daughters in her own generation, I said. I felt the lie in my mouth, tasted it, bitter and practiced and entirely inadequate. Selim turned his head. He was close, very close. Close enough that when he looked at me, directly, fully, with those storm-grey eyes that missed nothing, I could not look away. "Did she?" he said. Not a question. A waiting. The quality of the silence between us changed. It became specific, pointed. The silence of 2 people who are circling the same truth from opposite sides and both know it and neither has yet decided to step into the center. "Selim." "Don't," he said. Gentle, devastating. "Don't explain it yet," he said. "I need." He paused. Looked down at the records. Back at me. "I need to ask you something first." "All right," I said. "The bond," he said. "What do you feel? Right now, in this room?" The question was so direct that it bypassed every defense I had. "Warmth," I said. "Constant. Here." I pressed my hand to my sternum without thinking. An awareness of exactly where you are. Of you, specifically. Not just a person. You. He nodded slowly. "Since the first night," he said. "Since the forest." "Yes," I said. "For me too," he said. "Since the first night." He looked back down at the record. At the line. Both daughters of the Voss line carried the scent. "The name you spoke," he said. "On the night of the full moon." I could not breathe. "Petra called you something," he said. "That was not Seren." The dust motes moved. The bond hummed. The lie, that I had worn for 9 days like a second skin, felt suddenly thin, translucent, as if the light coming through the high window was showing him the shape of what was underneath. "Selim," I said. "Tell me something true," he said. "Not tell me everything. Not tell me who you really are. Just something true." As if he understood, instinctively, or through the bond, or through whatever made him capable of wielding patience like a scalpel, that the whole truth, dropped into this room without preparation, would shatter something neither of us was ready to lose. I thought of Seren, her grey eyes fixed on the sky, the wound at her side, the wolves howling, not in mourning, but in recognition. And underneath that, underneath the grief and the lie and the terrible complicated weight of it, the simple, irreducible fact. I loved her, I said. Whoever I am, whatever is true or not true about why I'm here, I loved her completely. And she's gone. And I am so sorry for all of it. The last words broke, not dramatically, quietly, the way things break when they have been held together too long by will alone. Selim set down the record he was holding. He did not move toward me. He did not move away. He simply sat with the broken thing I had just set between us and let it be there without rushing to fix it or flee it. She, he said, soft, noting the pronoun. Yes, I said. Another silence. Then he said, and his voice had a different quality now, lower, more careful, the voice of a man walking across ice and listening for the sounds of it. Are you the elder? The question landed in the room like the first crack. Are you Seren? That was what he was asking. And the answer was no. The answer was, I am Mara. I am the second twin. Your bond has chosen the wrong daughter, and I have been lying to you since the first night, and your chosen mate is dead in the forest I came from, and I don't know who killed her, and I am frightened, and I am sorry, and I have been becoming someone I didn't know I could be inside a life I was never supposed to have. That was the truth. The whole of it. Sitting in my mouth like a stone. I opened my mouth. The door opened. Rail. Face tight. Eyes urgent. Alpha, he said. The Thornfield delegation is here. Formally. With the council elder. Selim closed his eyes for one breath. One breath only. Opened them. I'll come, he said. He rose. At the door he turned back. Looked at me. I was still sitting at the table. Still with the stone in my mouth. Still with the answer he had asked for not yet given. Tonight, he said. We finish this conversation. He left. And I sat in the archive room with the founding records spread around me and my dead sister's name and my real name and the truth suspended between them like a bridge I had not yet decided whether to cross. Tonight, he had said tonight, which meant I had one day to decide how to say the unsayable, one day to find the words that might survive the telling, or one day to lose my nerve entirely. The question was not whether the truth would come out. It would. It always does. The question was only this. When it came, would he hear the love that had grown inside the lie, or only the lie? Chapter 10. The Thornfield delegation filled the great hall. There were 7 of them, the council elder at their center, a man of considerable age and considerable authority, with white hair and the eyes of someone who had spent a lifetime making decisions that other people had to live with. His name was Aldrich. I knew this because Rael told me, in a low and urgent voice, as he intercepted me in the corridor outside the archive room and steered me firmly toward the great hall with a hand at my elbow that was not quite gentle. You need to be present, he said. Why? Because this is about you, he said. The hall was full but quiet, the particular quiet of a room where everyone is performing composure and no one is quite achieving it. Pack members lined the walls. Isolde stood to the right of the fireplace with her arms at her sides and her face carefully neutral, which I had learned was her most dangerous expression. Selim stood at the head of the room. Aldrich stood opposite him. The space between them had the quality of a held blade. I entered. Every eye in the room found me. Aldrich's gaze settled on me with the deliberate weight of a man who has prepared extensively for this moment. The Voss, he said. Yes, I said. Selim's eyes moved to me briefly. A warning in them, or a question, or both. I could not fully parse it across the distance of the room. I'll be direct, Aldrich said. He had the voice of a man who considered directness a form of power, which, in my experience, it is, when wielded carefully. The council has concerns about this bond. The council's concerns have been noted, Selim said. Repeatedly. They have not been addressed, Aldrich said. There is a difference. He turned slightly, including the room in his next words. The mate bond of the Ashwood Alpha determines the future of this entire region. It affects alliance structures, territorial agreements, pack succession. It is not, and I say this with respect, a private matter. The bond, Selim said quietly, is precisely a private matter. It is the most private matter that exists. The bond may be private, Aldrich said. The mate is not. He turned fully to me now. I held his gaze. "The council requires verification," he said. "That the Voss heir is who she claims to be." The room temperature dropped by several degrees. Or perhaps that was only what it felt like. "Verification," I said. "The Voss bloodline was registered with the council 3 generations ago," Aldrich said. "At the time of the original agreement. A record was kept, not only of the agreement's terms, but of the bloodline's identifying markers." He paused. "In wolves," he said, "identity is carried in the scent, in the blood. It cannot be disguised or performed." The council elder of the time recorded the Voss bloodline's scent signature in the archive. He looked at the eldress Myra, who had appeared, silently, as she always did, at the edge of the gathering. "Eldress," he said, "the record." Myra moved to the center of the room with the unhurried calm of a woman who has known this moment was coming and has decided, long in advance, how she will meet it. She carried a small sealed case. She set it on the table. "The scent record," she said, "is preserved in a medium that retains its accuracy for up to 5 generations." She opened the case. Inside, a small vial of dark liquid, viscous, almost resinous. It was taken from the Voss woman herself. "It carries the signature of the bloodline." She looked at me. "If the heir is genuine," Aldrich said, "the signature will resonate with her blood. The test is simple. It is conclusive." The room waited. I stood at the center of it, and I understood, with absolute clarity, in the space of a single held breath, what was happening. This was not about me specifically. This was about the bond. Aldrich and his council, and Isolde's faction behind him, did not know I was Mara rather than Seren. They had not figured out the deception. They were trying to break the bond on different grounds, to challenge the legitimacy of the agreement, to introduce doubt, to force a delay that might allow other political arrangements to solidify. But in doing so, they had accidentally built the instrument of my undoing, because the scent record would show the Voss bloodline. I was Voss, as much as Seren was. But it might also show, to a sharp enough nose, to a precise enough reading, a differentiation. Seren and I were identical in almost every way. But almost is a very precise word. "Myra," Selim said. His voice was controlled. Perfectly controlled. "Is this test conclusive in the way Aldrich claims?" The eldress looked at him. Her expression was complex, layered, the face of a woman navigating between several truths at once and choosing each step with extraordinary care. "It will confirm the Voss bloodline," she said. Definitively. What she did not say. "It will also confirm which Voss." Selim looked at me. I looked at him. In the bond, in that warm, constant, irrefutable current between us, I felt something pass. Not words. Not images. Awareness. He knew something was wrong. He had known since the archive room, since the record that said both daughters carried the scent, since Petra had called me Mara in the moonlit room. He had been waiting. He had been protecting the space in which I might tell him the truth. And now the space was closing. "I'll take the test," I said. Selim went very still. "There's no need to," he began. "I'll take it," I said again. And I looked at Aldrich with the steadiest gaze I had. Because there was something I had understood, standing in the center of that room with all those eyes on me and the bond pulling at my chest and the lie finally reaching the limit of how far it could stretch. If the test confirmed the Voss bloodline, and it would, because I was Voss, then the council's challenge would fail. The bond would stand. And the truth that mattered most, the truth the eldress had been holding for me, that the bond chose correctly, that I had always been the one it was reaching for, that truth would have a chance. The other truth, the name, the twin, that truth could still be told. But it would be told by me, on my own terms, to Selim, not extracted in a hall full of political maneuvering, not weaponized by people who wanted to destroy what was growing between us for reasons that had nothing to do with its authenticity. The eldress uncapped the vial. She moved to me. I held out my hand, one drop on the inside of my wrist. The liquid was cold, briefly, sharply cold, and then warm, and then it spread through the skin like ink through water. And then, it sang. There is no other word. The resonance between the blood in the vial and the blood in my veins produced something that everyone in the room felt. A vibration, low and ancient and unmistakable, that moved through the air and the floor and the walls of the great house. Voss. Unmistakably, completely, anciently Voss. The eldress looked at the result on my wrist, the way the liquid had bloomed into a pattern, dark against my skin, complex and deliberate. She looked at Aldrich. "The Voss bloodline," she said, "is confirmed." The room exhaled. Aldrich's expression compressed into something tightly controlled. Isolde looked at the floor. Selim looked at me. And I looked back at him with the Voss pattern on my wrist and my real name in my chest and the enormous, terrifying, unavoidable conversation that was now not hours away but minutes. And I thought, all right, it is time. Chapter 11. He came to my room an hour after the hall had cleared. I was sitting by the window. I had not changed my position since I had come upstairs, had sat with the Voss pattern fading slowly on my wrist and the window's cold glass against my temple and thought, with great care and no resolution, about how to begin. There is no good way to begin a sentence like this. I had tried several openings in my mind and discarded them all. I need to tell you something. Too careful. I've been lying to you. Too blunt. Too self-focused. Her name was Seren. Yes, perhaps that. Her name was Seren. The knock, when it came, was not like Isolde's 3 precise strikes. It was 2 knocks. Quiet. Almost hesitant. Which from a man who was never hesitant about anything meant something specific. That he was choosing to approach this as a person rather than an alpha. That he was setting down the weight of the title outside my door and coming in as simply himself. "Come in," I said. He entered, closed the door behind him, stood for a moment in the center of the room without sitting, looking at me with the storm-gray eyes that had been cataloguing me since the first night, assembling the evidence, arriving, I believed, at the truth on his own before I had managed to give it to him. "The test confirmed the Voss bloodline," he said. "Yes, but not Seren's specifically." A silence. "No," I said. The word was very small, and very large. He sat, not in the chair, but on the floor, his back against the wall beside the window, so that we were at the same level. An equalizing choice. "Deliberate. Tell me," he said. 2 words. No qualifier. No limit. No accusation built into them. Just, tell me. So I did. I told him everything. The cedar box and the papers. The summons and what Seren had said. I think it may be about the old agreement, and how she had read the documents 3 days before and had not shared everything she found. The road to Ashwood. The forest. The sounds that came before I saw her. The particular quality of the silence that changed before I understood why. The wound. The grey eyes fixed upward. Her name, spoken and not answered. The wolves howling, not in mourning. And then the fear. The border. The cloak. His name, Seren Voss. And my answer, yes. I did not look away from him as I spoke. I thought I owed him that, the direct, unflinching account. No softening. No strategic framing. Just the truth, in the order it had happened, delivered steadily. His face, as he listened, was very still. Not the stillness of a man suppressing rage. I had learned enough about Selim in 11 days to know what that looked like. This was different. This was the stillness of a man absorbing something enormous and choosing, consciously, not to let the size of it knock him over. When I finished, the room was silent for a long time. The moon, not full now, 3 days past full, but still strong, laid a long pale rectangle across the floor between us. "Mara," he said. "My name. My real name." In his mouth. For the first time. Something happened to me when he said it. Something I cannot fully describe, only that it felt like being seen. Not the performance of being seen. Not the borrowed visibility of Seren's name and Seren's cloak. Seen. As myself. As Mara, who grew a garden and kept half a step behind and loved her sister fiercely and completely and imperfectly. Mara, who had crossed a border in terror and answered to the wrong name and somehow, inside the wrong life, found something that felt, for the first time, entirely right. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know," he said. "I should have told you." "Yes," he said. "Not cruel. Not forgiving. Just accurate." "The night in the clearing," I said. "When I almost." "I remember," he said. He was quiet again. I waited. "Seren," he said. "Your sister. She was coming here willingly," I said. "She wasn't afraid. She was prepared. She would have been." I stopped. "She would have been extraordinary here." "And you," he said. "What would you have been?" The question opened something unexpected in my chest. "Home," I said. "I would have been home. Probably. Tending a garden no one else cared about. Missing her." "Instead," he said. "Instead," I said. He rose. moved to the window, stood looking out at the moonlit forest with his hands at his sides and his profile to me, the strong jaw, the careful eyes, the weight of a title carried since 17. "The bond," he said. "Yes," I said. "It chose you." "The eldress thinks it was always supposed to," I said. "That your grandmother may have suspected, that the agreement was written for the elder, but the bond would find its own way." "My father's agreement," he said, quietly, to himself as much as me. He said, when he made it, he said the Voss woman was very precise, that she used the word firstborn, not the name, that he had asked her why, and she had smiled. He turned from the window. "She knew," he said. "I think she did," I said. "I think she knew and she couldn't control it, and she did what her custom required. She sent the elder, but she built a door into the agreement. For you," he said. "For whichever of us the bond chose," I said. He looked at me across the moonlit room. The bond hummed between us, constant, warm, irrefutable. 10 days old and already deeper than anything I had known. Built on a lie, rooted in something true. "She was murdered," he said. "Not a question. The wound was deliberate," I said. "Made by someone who knew where to strike, who knew she was coming to Ashwood." His jaw tightened. "Someone who wanted to stop the bond," he said. "Or who wanted a different bond," I said. His eyes sharpened. "Isolde," I said. "Or Aldrich. Or both." I watched him process it. Watched the pieces align behind his eyes the way pieces do when someone already suspects something and is given the evidence that confirms it. "If Seren never arrived," he said, "the agreement would be considered broken. The bond wouldn't form. The council would push for an alliance bond, most likely Thornfield." "Isolde," I said again. "Or Aldrich acting independently," he said. "Isolde is calculating. Aldrich is older, less patient." He was quiet. "I need to know who killed her," I said. "That is, regardless of everything else. I need to know." "Yes," he said, simply, without debate. "I'll find out," he said. "I promise you that." Something cracked open in my chest, not grief, this time, or not only grief, something that was also relief. The relief of not being alone with it anymore, of having set the burden down in front of another person and having them look at it without flinching. "Selim," I said. He looked at me. "What happens now?" I asked. "With all of it. The bond, the agreement, the name. I am not what you were sent. I am not. You are exactly what the bond chose," he said. "That may not be enough. Politically, legally, the agreement named the elder. The agreement," he said, "was written by a woman who knew it would find its way to you. The eldress will confirm it. The original document uses firstborn, not Seren's name. Aldrich will challenge it. Let him," he said. 3 words. The complete sufficiency of them. You're not angry," I said, surprised, in spite of myself. He looked at me for a long, considering moment. "I am," he said. "That I wasn't told sooner. That you carried it alone. That someone in my territory or its borders may have killed your sister to prevent this." His voice was even, but the evenness cost him something. I could hear the cost. "I am very angry about all of those things." "But," I said. "But," he said, "the bond doesn't lie. And the bond has been telling me, since the first night in the forest, that you are, exactly, where you are supposed to be." He moved toward the door. Stopped. "Mara," he said. My name again. Still as strange and as right as the first time. "Yes," I said. "My name is Selim," he said. "And I am glad, however it happened, whatever it cost, that you crossed the border of Ashwood." He left. I sat in the moonlight, with my real name in the air around me, with the truth told and the world not ended, with a man walking down the corridor of his own house carrying the weight of what I had told him, and choosing, as he walked, not to set down the bond alongside it. He was glad I had come. Not Seren. Me. Mara. The second twin. The quiet one. The one who had always stood half a step behind. Until now. Chapter 12. The morning Selim named me before the pack. The sky was the color of old pewter. Not silver, pewter. Darker. The color of a sky that has seen many things and holds them all equally without preference for sunlight. It had been 4 days since our conversation in the moonlit room. 4 days in which a great deal had happened quietly and a few things had happened loudly. Quietly, Selim had spoken with the eldress. The original agreement had been produced, the copy held in Ashwood's own archive, and the critical word confirmed. Firstborn. Not Seren. Not a name. A condition that Mara Voss, born 14 minutes before her twin crossed the threshold of the world, had technically met. The 14 minutes. Those 14 minutes, which had always felt like an accident of timing, a meaningless footnote, had, it turned out, been everything. Also quietly, Rael had ridden to the forest at Selim's instruction, to the place I had described, to find what remained of Seren. He returned without words about what he had found, but he returned having found it, and with it, evidence. A blade, specifically, designed for one purpose, carrying a crest that Selim recognized and spent 2 days not telling me about while he confirmed what he already knew. Loudly, on the third morning, Aldrich of the council had been escorted from Ashwood's grounds. Isolde had left the same day, not escorted. Chosen. She had come to my room before she left. She had stood in the doorway. She had not said what I expected her to say. She was braver than I gave her credit for, Isolde said. Your sister. She knew the road was dangerous and she came anyway. You didn't send Aldrich after her, I said. It was not a question. A pause. No, she said. But you knew he had, I said. A longer pause. I suspected, she said. After she didn't arrive. She met my gaze. I said nothing, which is its own kind of action. Yes, I said. It is. She looked at me for a moment with those amber eyes. Stripped of calculation now, just a person. Take care of him, she said. Quietly. He has been carrying that house alone for 3 years. She left, and I stood in the doorway and felt the complicated, imperfect truth of grief, that even the people who harm us can also, in their way, love what we love. Aldrich was not quietly dealt with. He would face the council's own review, the evidence of the blade, the crest, the orchestrated timing. That was not mine to manage. That was pack justice. Old and absolute and not requiring my participation. What was mine? What arrived on the 4th morning with the pewter sky? Was this, the naming. I had not expected it to be public. I had not expected Selim to call the pack to the open ground before the great house. All of them, the full number, wolves and their bonded humans and the children and the old ones and Petra, standing near the back, watching with her dark eyes wide. I had not expected him to take my hand in front of all of them. His hand was warm. Wolves run warm, I knew this now. I knew many things now that I had not known 11 days ago. Ashwood, he said. His voice carried without effort, not raised, but full, the way a bell is full even at low volume. The pack stilled. You were told a name when our guest arrived, he said. A name from your records. A name you accepted. The silence was absolute. The name was not wrong, he said, but it was incomplete. He turned to me, the storm-gray eyes, the steady regard, the bond, no longer forming now, but formed, complete, settled deep in the chest like the root system of something that had grown in the dark and found its way to exactly where it needed to be. Her name is Mara Voss, he said, firstborn of her generation by blood and by time. 14 minutes that the old agreement always intended to account for. The bond chose her. The record confirms her. And I name her before this pack as the one I claim. A sound moved through the pack. Not words. Deeper than words. The sound of a group of people, a group of beings, receiving information that the oldest part of them already knew. The wolves at the edges of the gathering lifted their heads. Not howling, just acknowledging. Then Selim looked at me, and the public moment was over, and what was left was private, just the two of us, standing in the pewter light, with the whole complicated truth between us. You don't have to stay, he said. Lo, only for me. You said that before, I said. I'm saying it again, he said. Now that you've told me everything. Now that it is a real choice, not a circumstance you were trapped in. Selim, I said. Yes. I burned the paper, I said. He looked at me. What paper? The one Isolde left, I said. The passage she arranged. The way out. I met his gaze. I burned it 8 days ago. Before I told you anything. Before any of this. A pause. Why? He asked. Because, I said. I had already decided. The bond hummed. His hand, which had released mine for the public naming, found mine again. Not a gesture. A fact. There is still the matter of your sister, he said. I know, I said. They will be a formal acknowledgement. A burial, with Voss rites, whatever those require. With Ashwood's acknowledgement that she died on the way to fulfilling an agreement she had accepted. She would have wanted that, I said. My voice did not break. Not this time. Tell me about her, he said. Quiet, without urgency. Now, I said. When you're ready, he said. I looked at the pewter sky, at the forest edge where the dark trees began, at the wolves moving back through their morning patterns, the day resuming, the pack returning to its rhythms. She stood like she expected the world to part for her, I said. And did it? Always, I said. Until it didn't. And you, he said. I always stood half a step behind, I said. He looked at me. Not anymore, he said. Not a command. An observation. A true one. I was not standing half a step behind. I was standing exactly where I was. In the pewter morning. In front of the great house of Ashwood. Beside the alpha of the pack. In my own name. In my own skin. For the first time, perhaps the only time that mattered, entirely, irreducibly, and irrevocably myself. There is a grave at the edge of Ashwood's western territory. A stone marker, old almost before it was finished, carved with the Voss name and the old tongue word for star. Seren. I come here in the mornings, sometimes. Not every morning. Not in grief, anymore, or not only in grief. Mostly in conversation. I tell her things. About the pack, and the way it changes with the seasons. About Petra, who is learning to transition with something approaching grace. About the Eldress, who has begun teaching me the records. The real ones, all of them, with all their complexities and contradictions. About Selim. I tell her about Selim. I tell her what kind of man he is, steady and warm beneath the weight he carries. The way he sets down the alpha mantle in private, deliberately. The way our grandfather used to set down his tools at the end of a long day. The particular way he laughs, rarely, genuinely, with his whole face. I tell her I'm sorry, for being alive when she isn't. For wearing her name when I should have led with mine. For the fact that the life she was coming to claim turned out to be, impossibly, agonizingly, tenderly, the one that was always mine. She doesn't answer. But the forest does, sometimes. In the way forests answer, with wind in specific patterns, with the particular silence after a bird call, with the quality of light through canopy that seems, occasionally, to be arranged rather than accidental. I choose to hear it as forgiveness. I choose to hear it as, I always knew it would be you, Mara. I just couldn't say it. The bond is complete now. Has been for months. It does not feel the way I expected. Not a chain, not a constraint, not even precisely a warmth, though it was those things when it was forming. Now it feels like, knowing, like the particular knowledge of a hand in the dark, of breath in a room, of something present and certain and entirely without the need for proof. Selim asked me, in the early weeks, whether I wished it had been simpler, whether I wished I had come to Ashwood as myself, openly, without the lie. I thought about that for a long time. If I had come as myself, I said, I would have come as someone who stood half a step behind, who apologized for taking up space, who would not have known how to answer a council challenge or sit on a floor with a frightened girl or refuse an easy escape. And, he said, and the lie, terrible as it was, put me in a life that was too large for the person I had been. And I grew into it. I paused. I grew into myself, inside it. Seren's life made you Mara, he said. Something like that, I said. He thought about that for a moment. I think, he said, you were always Mara. You just needed the circumstances to be large enough that you couldn't afford to be anything less. I carry that with me. In the morning visits to the Western Marker. In the evenings in the archive room. In the moments, daily, ordinary, extraordinary, of living a life that chose me before I chose it. The wolves know my scent now. I notice the absence of that. Sometimes, the absence of the careful watching that accompanied my first days in Ashwood. They move around me the way they move around the house itself. As if I am part of the landscape. As if I belong to the geography. I do. I know that now. Not because I performed belonging, or earned it through the bond, or claimed it through the agreement. But because I stayed, when I could have left. When the paper was on the windowsill and the way out was clear and the ordinary world was visible from the hilltop where the canopy broke. I stayed. And staying, I have learned, is its own kind of claim. Its own kind of truth. More binding than a name. More permanent than a lie. more real, perhaps, than even the bond, because the bond is ancient and inevitable and written in blood. But the staying was mine. The last thing I told Seren, on a morning when the frost was new on the stone of her marker and the forest was making its particular answering sounds. I will live it well, both of our shares of it. I promise. The forest was quiet, then a single bird, then silence again. And in the silence, the kind that follows a name spoken into air, the particular piece of a thing understood, not resolved, not without grief, but understood, which is, perhaps, all we can ever truly ask of the lives we find ourselves living. Not happiness, exactly, not the absence of loss, just understanding, and the courage, earned or borrowed or stumbled into on a dark road toward a forest border in the middle of the night. To stay. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Leave it in the stillness, if you like. Some answers don't need to be spoken. They just need to be felt.